Welcome, everyone, to Skyfarer Academy's ongoing webinar series designed to bring valuable, expert-driven information to members of the aviation community. I'm Matthew Shebley from Skyfarer Academy, and today's session features a presentation from Avemco Aviation Insurance, one of the most trusted and longest-standing names in the industry. In fact, I'm a former client from the 1980s when I was part owner in a 1969 Beechcraft Musketeer. We're here to talk about something essential for every pilot, why insurance matters. Whether you're renting, training, or owning an aircraft, the right coverage is critical. It's the critical part of managing risk and keeping you flying safely and confidently. We're excited to have Kim Skipper from Avemco with us to break down what pilots need to know about insurance, the tips, trends, and true stories that will help you make smart decisions about securing the correct insurance coverage. Thank you, Kim, for being here. I will turn the program over to you, so let's get started.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. And thanks to Skyfarer to having us on. We're going to go over some general tips and tricks and things to be aware of. And during the presentation, we'll also be throwing in some real world stories and unfortunately things that have created issues for our customers and hopefully eliminating them for you going forward. To start off, just to give you an overview, this is all the figures are based on Avemco and what we do and what our policies say. Each company is different. We write owned aircraft policies for personal use. We offer non-owned renter policies for both students and CFIs. We write flying clubs, and we also have some term life coverage available. As far as policies goes, the first thing that's really important to understand is aviation policies are not like your typical auto policy, where if you go to big brand A, B, and C, your coverages, your policies, your exclusions are going to be pretty much identical. In the aviation world, each policy is completely different. What they do and do not cover can be different, and what they exclude can be different. So it's really important to understand what the contract says. As far as coverage options, you've got three basic coverages that most policies are going to offer. One is your liability that covers injury to other people and other people's property, as well as the legal defense. You've got what's called hull coverage that covers damage to your own airplane, and then medical, which is a no-fault coverage in case you get hurt getting in or out of the airplane that is available. Non-owner coverage is the one of the places we see most people start out as they're learning to fly and or renting an airplane. There we've got bodily injury and property damage coverage. It's important to note that the property damage does not extend out to damage to the airplane you're renting or borrowing. That is actually a separate coverage called aircraft damage liability. What's very important in all of these is to understand what you can and cannot use that airplane for. Most policies are going to exclude using it for any kind of commercial endeavor where you're getting money or other benefits. They might also exclude instruction, ferry flights, even if you're not making a payment or getting paid to do so. Also important is what is considered a non-owned airplane. At Avemco, we limit it initially to a single-engine airplane, no more than 450 horsepower, 7 seats, a standard airworthiness certificate. And it also excludes airplanes that you or your family members own in whole or in part, other than if you have less than a 20% interest in it, it is not considered a non-owned airplane. What we see here sometimes is you'll get a customer that owns the airplane, they put it in an LLC for various reasons, and then they end up renting it back from the flight school, assuming it's not owned, but because you own the LLC, that is still your airplane and would not be covered under a standard non-owner policy. In addition, it's important to understand that this is a policy designed to cover your liability as the renter pilot. It's not going to cover a mechanical failure. a bird strike, that type of thing, where you're not at fault for the damage to the airplane. And it is only for your benefit. It does not provide coverage for the owner of the airplane. They should have their own policy to do that. We also do offer CFI coverage in rented or borrowed airplanes, or in a lot of cases, if you're instructing in the owner's airplane. That's very common. We have two different types. One is our standard CFI non-owner. That one you need to be in the airplane at the time of the loss. And then we have a policy that's issued if you're a member of NAFI. Not only you get the benefits of being a NAFI member associated with that, but we also provide coverage for instruction you have given in the past, provided the accident occurs during the policy period. This is commonly looked at as like a professional malpractice coverage. And while we haven't seen any claims where the courts have actually awarded damages to that injured party, you do still have to pay a lot of legal expenses as it goes through the trial process. The benefit of having this policy is the legal expenses are paid above and beyond what your limits are. And the attorney fees are not inexpensive by any stretch of the imagination. On the owner side of a policy, we rate basic pleasure and business coverage. We offer many different liability coverages as well as aircraft damage. There, in a lot of places, you can buy full coverage for your aircraft damage, or it can be restricted to what we call ground only, that would also include some taxi coverage. It's a way to save money. The premium is a little bit less, but you are leaving areas of not having coverage. It's important when you're buying a policy to make sure that you explain to us how you're going to use the airplane, because you don't want to find out later that you don't have coverage for the activity that you're planning on. And I'll give you a couple of real world examples of that. And it's important that the people that you're going to let fly the airplane are considered an approved pilot. Again, a very important thing, because if it's not operated by an approved pilot, there is no coverage under the owner's policy. And tying the two together, both the owned and the non-owned, how they work, the owner policy comes in first and should cover the damage to the airplane as well as some liability. The non-owner really just benefits the renter in having it. It doesn't provide anything extra back to the owner. What we commonly see here, or the misconception, is as an owner, I have a policy and perhaps I want to add Nick on there as an approved pilot. And I talk to the insurance company and I find out it's going to cost me a lot of money to add him on. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to do it because Nick's got his own non-owner policy. That works great for Nick. Nick has got no issues from that standpoint. But what happens in the event of a claim, my company is going to look at it and say, well, Nick's not an approved pilot. There's no coverage under it. So if it was a mechanical issue, let's see, Nick's flying my Aero, and he comes in and he puts the gear down, does everything right, and the gear collapses. His non-owner policy looks at it and says, Nick's not at fault for the maintenance. There's no coverage there. My owner policy looks at it and says, Nick's not an approved pilot. There's no coverage here either. So now I'm left with a busted up airplane and no one's going to pay out on it. We see that with approved pilots, but we also see with an owner that owns the airplane and he's going to rent it out to other people or rent it to a CFI to use to give instruction. That same issue applies, because the use of the airplane isn't what the policy talks about. The owner's policy is not going to provide any coverage, which could leave you with the damage to the airplane. But also in the event of a lawsuit, when anyone's flying the airplane, not only do we see the pilot get named, but we also see the owner of the airplane. And in these type of situations, the owner's policy is not going to provide you liability coverage, or even more importantly, the legal defense associated with it. Moving on a little bit into claims, This surprises a lot of people is what percentage of Avemco claims actually do you see on the NTSB report? And here you'd be surprised that only 23% of the claims that I see in a yearly basis provides and you see on the NTSB report. So frequently you'll see all claims are down. The NTSB is showing less reports. Well, claims aren't really going down. And then by phase of flight, this is interesting to a lot of people. 52% of the claims that I see in a yearly basis occur when the airplane is on the ground. Now, when we talk about ground, that also includes taxiing to and from the active runway. 30% occurred during landing and approach, 13% in flight, and 5% occur on takeoff. Some of the most common claims we see involve taxi and distraction. Here's an issue where a gentleman was taxiing the airplane and that was damage done by a rubber cone that was out on the ramp. Very common. Another common issue we see is pushing the airplane in and out of the hangar. Here, a lot of people will put blocks down on the floor to help them navigate and know when to stop in pushing the airplane back in. Keep in mind, those blocks may move backwards just a hair every time you bump it. And the next thing you know, you run your tail into the backside of the hangar. And keep in mind what else you may be storing in the hangar. We've had instances where we go out and examine the claim and the damage to the tail section, and the paint transfer from the airplane is on the filing cabinet and some of the other large boxes they have in the backside of the hangar. Loss of directional control, I see these on a regular basis. 3% during taxi, 2% on takeoff, and as you can see, landing is the biggest issue with losing directional control. These are things that can be mitigated by doing additional training. And then I thought I'd share some of what I would consider, wow, I haven't seen that type of claim before. We see these I see standard claims all the time, but here's some fun ones. This was an unsecured ladder. You actually can see the ladder in the back of the airplane. Well, during flight, they hit some turbulence and the windshield did not exactly win in this situation. Next up, I have a golf cart versus a plane. Unfortunately, in this case, the plane actually was considered a total loss. It actually pushed the right elevator of the airplane into the wall, damaging it as well. As you can see in this next picture, that golf cart was heavily embedded in the airplane. Next, we have this one occurred in a Blanca 8K CAB. The clip securing the fire extinguisher actually broke and came loose, and while doing a roll, the fire extinguisher hit the window and broke it. In this case, the pilot was lucky that it didn't actually hit him, in the head during that situation. Unsecured wheel chocks in the back of the airplane. Here, the back window lost. In this one, the wheel chock won. A lot of times we get reports of damage to the windshield by an unknown object. And when we go out to investigate the claim, you hold the chock up to the crack in the hole in the window, and it's a mirror image. So we see that not a lot, but once every couple of years, I'll see that. Here's an instance where during unloading of the co-pilot seat, the airplane seat belt was actually left outside of the airplane, unknown to the pilot. He was wearing noise canceling headsets, so he didn't hear the seat belt beating the airplane. This cost about $5,000 to fix. I've only seen this one once. This was a porta potty in the wind, broke loose and damaged an airplane. I've seen that once in 39 years. This is a reminder to keep things that you use getting in and into the airplane in your hand or secured. This gentleman used a step stool, one of those little plastic jobs you get at Walmart, tied a rope to it, used it to get in and out of his airplane. He thought he had secured it in the aircraft, but had not, and actually had the rope cut shut in the door. So as he's going down for takeoff, the step stool starts flying loose, and you can see where it is banged into the airplane, causing additional damage. Tow bars are another thing we do see a little more frequently. Tow bars cost a little bit when they're being used to get the airplane in and out. They cost a lot of money when you forget to remove them before starting the engine. Next up, this one was up in Alaska. This was a bear family versus the cub. This was mama and a couple bear cubs tore at the airplane. That caused substantial damage to the aircraft itself. Moving onward, there are ways to save. At least with Avemco, we do provide up to a 10% training discount for participating in our safety rewards program. You can earn 5% by doing FAA Wings knowledge courses, including King's Score, Gleams, pilot workshops. There's an additional 5% by completing an Avemco recognized training. This is traditionally in-flight type training, as well as listening to any of our Avemco sponsored safety podcasts and internet shows. You can see our listing here. And getting a new rating or endorsement adds another 10%, or is another way to get 10. The most you can get is 10%. And then we do sponsor the FAA Wings pins. Last year we gave out 3,914. And of our safety program, it is a way to save 10%, but less than half of our customers actually take advantage of that. That was kind of an unusual fact in my mind. And then thank you again for letting us participate. And I'll open it up for questions from the floor.
Thank you, Kim, very much. I think that we've had a lot of various questions kind of posed before the presentation, and I thought that you did a great job actually answering most of them. Especially, I like the part about when you talked about the instructor liability and an aircraft owner liability, and how the two policies can kind of negate each other in many respects. One question, and again, we have a large instructor community with Skyfarer Academy. There's often confusion about when the FAA's 100-hour inspection rule applies. From the insurance standpoint, how does Avemco view instruction on an aircraft that's being rented or used for hire but has not had a 100-hour inspection?
We don't have an exclusion in our non-owner policy regarding that. Since we don't write it for an owner standpoint, we wouldn't have that in there as well.
Okay. And again, I think there's, even at my flight school, the CFIs or the flight schools require students to carry renter's insurance now. From your perspective, what's the minimum coverage levels that you would kind of recommend students carry before soloing cross country flights, or is it kind of affected by the areas they're training in or going across the country?
It varies by a lot. Yes, where they're flying, the type of airplane they're renting and borrowing, what the flight school's contract may or may not hold them responsible for, and what the flight school's policy may cover. Some may only hold you responsible for the deductible and some lost revenue. Others may hold you responsible for the entire value of the airplane. And as far as the bodily injury and property damage, it really depends on your comfort need as well as your age. If you're a 16-year-old starting out just learning to fly, realistically, you don't have a lot of assets versus someone more established in their 40s and 50s that own a home. You've got a lot more assets readily available that you're going to want to protect. So it does really depend on the person. One thing I will point out as well, as a student pilot or a renter pilot in general, you want to be cautious about the contract you're signing with the airport and really understand what you're agreeing to when you rent the airplane. We have seen contracts that require the renter pilot to be responsible for any and all damage while that airplane is in their care, custody, and control. And that's between both you and the rental operator. Keep in mind the non-owner policy we talked about only covers it if you're at fault for the damage. So they're two different independent things. You may agree to pay for it, but your non-owner policy is only going to pay what we've agreed to pay for. So you want to be mindful of what you're signing. Make sure you understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to consider. I think the last question here was, we have some instructors, some airports require some of our instructors or operators to have commercial operating permit to legally provide instruction at the field. Is it the absence of a permit on the instructor's part? Does that impact an insurance claim, or is that more of a regulatory issue versus an insurance issue?
That would be definitely a regulatory issue and an issue you may have with the airport in letting you operate there going forward. But from the insurance standpoint, it wouldn't be an issue.
Excellent. Well, I tell you, Kim, this has been very informative. It's really, it feels like we're just scratching the surface. There's so much to know and learn about this, especially for student pilots and people just entering this community, our aviation community. So again, I think this reinforces the need for expertise in this field and to leverage your broker, your insurance person, like yourself, Kim, to help make sure that you're protected, that you understand where your risks are, and make sure that you're fully covered. So
exactly.
Absolutely. Kim, thank you for your time today. And thank you for everyone at Avemco Aviation Insurance. And thank you to everyone for joining us at the session. And from all of us at Skyfarer Academy, we look forward to having you again at another webinar in the near future. Again, thank you, everybody.